This is step 4 of 7 Steps to Heaven, which is a handout available at learnjazzstandards.com. It's printed underneath the video if you're watching this at that particular website. And this one is somewhat similar to what I talked about in step 3. Touched on it a little bit. Step 4, if you don't have the handout in front of you, just simply states, play using long connected lines, mostly eighth notes, without breaking the flow. So kind of a continuous legato kind of flow of eighth notes all the way through. Concentrating on creating as much density as possible. I've heard in some clinics where some educators use the comparison to Coltrane. In fact, the famous recordings of Miles Davis's quintet in the late 1950s that had John Coltrane in it, they're actually using kind of thinking in terms of Coltrane as a density player, you know, filling up a lot of space, and then Miles, which will be our next step, using as much space as possible instead of filling that all up. So in some ways what you're doing here is you're trying to reinforce kind of a bad habit, because there's a lot of players that will play without taking a breath or taking a step or anything, and they'll keep continuing all the way through. And so to let you know how step 4 kind of plays out against a play-along, there is a play-along of all the things you are available at learnjazzstandards.com. But here's an idea of how this would work.
One, two,
kind of
three,
continuous
4.
flow. Very notey way of playing, which you'll hear a lot of younger players sometimes, and even more experienced players, is playing kind of a lot of notes coming at you. So this is purposely, again, kind of more of a practice technique. You're forcing yourself into one mode of thinking of, I'm going to play with as much density as possible, only stopping to where you have to take a breath. I guess if you can circular breathe, you can really, you know, take it to another level where you're just completely playing this line of notes all the way through. And I've heard some people refer to it as, you know, more of a Coltrane type of way of playing. You know, a very dense, lots of notes, because he did practice out of harp exercise books and very arpeggiated, particularly if you think of him during the Giant Steps period. There's not a lot of space in that particular solo, the famous Giant Step solo, and right in that period, the late 50s, early 60s, when he was with Miles Davis's group. And it created that contrast, the way he played compared to the way that Miles played. So you're playing with as much density as possible, and again, this is a hard step to really achieve unless you already have under your fingers the chord progression, which I mentioned earlier in step 2. So being able to play through the chord progressions, doing 1, 3, 5 arpeggios all the way through, you really have the melody down, you know what the form of the tune is. And you could also do this just as easily with a metronome, right? So if you set it and call that your quarter note, so, and the challenge becomes really to try to play, even though you know in the back of your mind, you get to the point where it's like, I want to take a breath, or I want to use some space. You become, I think, acutely aware of the fact that you're filling up all of the space. So it's kind of doing one extreme, of really playing as many notes as possible. And it's hard to just kind of keep that flow going all the way through there. And you really have to think subconsciously, you know, really have the chord changes under your fingers and thinking that's really more of a subconscious process. You can't be consciously thinking, what change am I playing now, or what key am I in, or where's the melody, or where's the form. That stuff on the earlier steps has to already be taken care of before you can have the liberty of just playing through as many notes as possible. So that's step 4, which is concentrating on using as much density as possible, kind of, again, a Coltrane manner. And in step 5, we'll actually cover the opposite of that, using as much space and color and playing more in a Miles Davis manner.